I'm 22 years old, and last year, I inherited the house I grew up in after my mom passed away suddenly from a stroke at 47. While her loss was devastating, I've come to terms with it. My parents divorced when I was 7, so I split my time between them. I was always closer to my mom. She understood me in ways my dad never did. He was too caught up in work or chasing women to give me much attention. But as long as I had my mom, that never really bothered me. After I turned 18 and went off to college, my dad moved to Houston for work. We only saw each other during the holidays. 2 years ago, he surprised me by bringing his girlfriend, Julia, and her 2 daughters, then 18 and 16, for Christmas. It was unexpected since he had never introduced me to any of his previous girlfriends. But we welcomed them warmly. Julia was always kind to me, though her daughters were shy and kept to themselves. When my mom passed, she left the house to me. She had always been practical, dividing her assets in her will when I turned 18. After graduation, I decided to move back in and find a local job. I wanted to hold on to the home that held so many memories. My dad was not happy about this, though he and Julia were supportive during the funeral. His mood soured when he realized he wouldn't be getting the house back. He and my mom had bought it when they first got married, but after their divorce, my mom got full ownership. It was only fair. She gave up her career to raise me while my dad focused on work, and she made sure I never went without. He didn't have to pay alimony, so she worked hard to provide for me. Despite that, he acted like he was entitled to the house, though he never said it outright. I had no patience for his sulking. I was grieving, and his disappointment over the house was the least of my concerns. Besides, my mom had left him all her wedding jewelry and the gifts he had given her over the years. He had no reason to complain. After the funeral, he and Julia returned to Houston, and I settled into living alone. 6 months ago, my dad told me he was engaged to Julia and wanted to get married here. He planned to stay in the house leading up to the wedding rather than book a hotel. Since their daughters were homeschooled, that wouldn't be an issue. I agreed. I'd been lonely, and I liked Julia. Plus, my dad promised to help with bills. They moved in a month before the wedding, and honestly, it was nice having them around. I felt less alone, and for the first time in a long while, I had a real sense of family. I even dreaded the idea of them leaving. But 2 weeks ago, just 3 days before the wedding, my dad asked if they could move in permanently. He framed it as wanting to ease me into having a family and said he didn't like the idea of me living alone. At first, I wanted to say yes, but then I remembered how bitter he had been about not getting the house back. As much as I loved the idea of a full house, I knew better than to make a hasty decision. I told him I needed time to think and that I'd let him know after the wedding. He looked annoyed but didn't argue. 10 days ago, they got married, and the wedding was amazing. They planned to stay a few more days before heading back to Houston, so I was getting ready to tell them my decision, which, by then, was a yes. But before I could, they disappeared. 2 days after the wedding, I woke up to an empty house. Their belongings were still here, but they were gone. Confused, I tried calling them, no answer. Hours passed before Julia finally picked up and casually told me they had left for their honeymoon and would be back in a week. I was stunned. They hadn't even mentioned they were leaving. No goodbye, no heads up, nothing. When I asked why they hadn't told me, she brushed it off with a weak excuse about forgetting, assuring me they'd be back soon. And just like that, all the warmth I had felt about them moving in started to fade. My issue wasn't just that they left without a word, it was how Julia dismissed me when I confronted her. She brushed it off, saying my dad was too busy to talk. I kept my cool and asked her to let me know when he was available. That's when her tone shifted. She became snarky, telling me he'd be busy for the next few days and that I shouldn't bother them. Then she went further. She accused me of acting hysterical just because I felt left out and reminded me I wasn't a child anymore. According to her, I needed to accept that my dad had a new family and get over it. She even had the audacity to tell me to clean the house before they got back. I was furious. That was the moment I knew I wasn't letting them move in. If Julia could be this condescending now, it would only get worse. Without hesitation, I packed up their belongings as carelessly as possible, shoved them into cardboard boxes, and dumped them in the yard. I didn't care what happened to their things, they no longer belonged in my home. Yesterday, they returned from their honeymoon. Fortunately, I was at work when they saw their stuff outside. By then, I had already changed the locks. My dad was livid when he called. yelling that I was being a brat and overreacting, insisting they had done nothing wrong. I stayed calm and told him to take their boxes and leave. If they were still on my property when I got home, I would call the police. He cursed at me and hung up. I didn't have time to dwell on it, I had work to focus on. When I got home, their things were gone. I thought that was the end of it. Then, around midnight, my dad called again, this time. Julia was on the line. She suddenly wanted to make amends, claiming she didn't want bad blood over something so petty, but I wasn't buying it. If she truly regretted her behavior, she would have apologized before their vacation, not after realizing they had nowhere else to go. I cut her off and told her to shut up. My dad, still refusing to take responsibility, tried guilt-tripping me. He called me heartless for not letting them stay and offered to split the bills. He even claimed he wanted to live here to feel closer to my mom. Then he blamed Julia's outburst on a bad mood and insisted that even her kids missed me. I wasn't having any of it. I knew he had wanted this house since the divorce, and now that I had seen Julia's true colors, there was no way I was taking that risk. I told him to go home. That's when he lost it. He started crying, accusing me of being selfish and ruining his happiest memories. He called me petty and cruel, saying my mom would hate this side of me. But I stood my ground. I wasn't going to let them move in after everything they'd done. Their lack of respect and entitlement told me everything I needed to know. Update. The comments on my original post were a wake-up call. Some were harsh, but I got the message loud and clear. I made the right decision. My dad doesn't deserve to live here after treating me this way. At first, everything seemed fine because they were being sweet, but the moment I didn't immediately give them what they wanted, their true nature showed. They thought they could intimidate me. They thought I was weak, but I'm not. I've realized I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who don't truly care about me. Looking back, my dad's reaction when he found out the house was mine should have been a red flag. It showed just how materialistic and selfish he really is. As for Julia, I'm glad she exposed herself. If she had kept up the nice act a little longer, I might have fallen for it and let them stay. But she got too comfortable, too arrogant, and ruined things for herself. I was vulnerable. I missed my mom. With no grandparents left and barely any family, I wanted connection. But these people aren't my family. They're just people who wanted something from me. It's been a few days, and my dad keeps calling and texting, begging for another chance, but they don't deserve one. They had their shot, and they blew it. And now, I know why my dad is so desperate. Final update. Turns out, my dad lost his job months ago. He blew all his savings on the wedding and honeymoon, and Julia quit her job to be a stay-at-home mom. Now, they're broke. My dad just assumed I'd. Julia didn't know the truth until recently, which explains her sudden apology, but that just proves how fake she is. She only cares now because she realizes my dad has nothing. Honestly, they deserve each other. Today, my dad asked if he could stay for a few days while he looked for a job. I told him no. They've treated me terribly, and I refuse to invite that negativity back into my life. He should have thought twice before blowing his savings on a wedding and honeymoon without having a stable income. That's not my problem, and I refuse to feel guilty for setting boundaries. I texted him back, politely explaining my decision. He took it as mockery, telling me I'd regret this and suffer for what I was doing. I didn't bother responding. At this point, anything I say will just be twisted against me. It's better to let him sit with his own choices. His life isn't my responsibility anymore. Final update. My dad finally decided to leave the city today, but of course, he couldn't do it quietly. He made sure to send one last message, letting me know what a huge disappointment I am as a daughter. He and Julia just had to turn it into a spectacle. I hadn't spoken to him in weeks, and we weren't checking in with each other. Then today, both he and Julia texted me, proudly announcing that Julia's ex-boyfriend had generously offered to fund their trip back home. Apparently, he suddenly decided he needed to be involved in his daughter's lives. Julia had full custody, and he had been paying child support but was too busy to spend time with them until now. According to them, he had been waiting for Julia and my dad to sort things out, but he finally stepped in himself. They didn't give me all the details, but they posted a picture of their daughters decorated with Lucky Charm and four-leaf clover stickers. I can guess what really happened. Julia is nothing if not manipulative, and I bet anything she played a role in making this happen. I don't know the full story, and I don't care. I'm just relieved they're gone. This will be the last time I have to deal with them. Reading other people's stories about their chaotic families made me realize that, in some ways, I had it easy. My dad values his reputation too much to try anything extreme, and even if he did, I wouldn't hesitate to call the cops. Plus, I know how to take care of myself. Now that they're out of my life, I have even less reason to worry. The loneliness still creeps in sometimes, but instead of letting it consume me, I focus on my friends. After my mom passed, I shut everyone out without realizing how isolated I had become. It wasn't until reading the comments here that I truly saw it. It'll take time, but I'm choosing to build a better life for myself. I have a stable job, a decent income, and my own home, all thanks to my mom's foresight. I have good friends who actually care about me. Honestly, what more do I need? And if I ever find myself in trouble again, I know exactly where to turn. The wonderful people on Reddit always seem to have my back.